to discuss the transfer for law enforcement trust.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I'll just start off, just for everybody's sake here, I'll read the letter that I sent to the Commission on Friday. Commissioners, there is a current fund balance as of August 25th of $77,383.95 in the LETF fund. Preliminary figures from AP and payroll for August 31st total $167,611.29. The budgeted balance of transfers from general revenue to law enforcement trust is currently $29,000. This leaves a shortfall of $61,227.34. If this amount is transferred from general revenue to law enforcement trust fund to cover the pending payroll and AP, we will need to encumber another budget line item in general revenue. LETF fund still has a budget balance of $1,372,978.64 after August 31st bills, so the budget for law enforcement trust fund is not the problem. However, the budget for the transfers from general revenue is the problem. My quarterly comparison report shows the revenues for law enforcement trust fund are down 29.64%, or $292,608 for first quarter, and down 28.26%, or $323,256 for second quarter this year compared to last year. So it's not surprising that we are at this point now. Then there was a paragraph about 911 fund needing a transfer, but they have had revenue come in, and so they don't need a transfer right now to meet the August 31st bills and payroll. I would suggest that a special meeting of the Commission be planned and posted and minutes be kept to determine where the shortfall of $61,227.34 will be pulled from to cover the expenses for law enforcement trust fund. My suggestion would be to encumber the transfers budgeted for 911 because the budgeted transfers are part of a department total, the department being transfers, and the 911 fund doesn't seem to be currently needing the transfers as regularly as they have in the past. As the year goes on, then if they run out of transfers to cover, if we run out of transfers to cover either law enforcement trust fund or 911, we'll need to pull budgeted funds from elsewhere within general revenue or use the emergency fund or possibly both if needed. So that is in order to make the necessary transfer to cover law enforcement trust fund bills, $61,227.34 is going to encumber some other part of the budget. And my suggestion was to encumber the other budgeted transfers for 911, but we have a disagreement on that. So.
Right, and when we encumber Margie's 911 budget, we effectively have removed those funds from her ability to spend them. Because if we're moving them over to cover what the sheriff has done, we've effectively cut her budget by that amount. And we absolutely cannot cut anyone. Let's flip-flop for a moment and pretend that the 911 was the one with the shortfall, and you propose to encumber $61,000 out of the sheriff's budget. We'd be right back in front of the judge. We can't lock up someone else's budget.
But as I understand it, the transfers are not a part of their revenue. They're just going to be moved into their fund if their revenue does not come in and they need that money to pay the bills. So right now, 911 is having adequate revenue.
Right. However, that 488 or whatever it was that we allocated to them, while they're not using it, we budgeted money to them based on that number. And if you reduce the amount of their transfer, you're reducing the amount, we're cutting their budget in mid-year.
Mm-hmm. Well, but you're also going over budget in general revenue somewhere along the line by transferring more than you budgeted.
Right, in that particular line we are.
So what I'm saying is that amount of money has to come from somewhere within the budget. Or else you're just planning on going over budget, period.
Regardless of what the income is, we have to honor the $16 million budget we set. If we run out of transfers, if we run out of sales tax, if we run out of property tax, we have to honor those. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we can't honor it by taking it away from somebody else. We absolutely cannot reduce anybody's budget in the middle of the year. We can't do it.
So you're suggesting we're just going to go over budget?
In that line, yes, we have to. Because we have to honor that commitment. At the end of the year, we'll say, and some of the other office holders are actually spending less than they've been budgeted, so maybe they'll even out a little bit. But at the end of the year, I can say, well, the revenue that we expected for the sheriff, because he never did get the federal prisoners back, didn't show up. And we had to honor. He's actually under budget for this point in the year by a little bit. But if he expends all of his budgeted funds, everything from here out as far as a shortfall, we have to make up. Because at the end of the year, if I have to keep authorizing transfers, I keep track of those and say, yeah, transfers to the sheriff's office, I went over. I can account for that. But if I try to reduce somebody's budget, I'm not going to make it to the end of the year. I'm going to be back in court learning another $50,000 lesson. I can't tie up Margie's or anybody else's budget. We have to pay his bills.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that the encumbrance is going to necessarily tie up Margie's budget, because it is possible that she may have revenue come in from other sources more than what was expected, and you may not need all of the transfers that you budgeted for her.
History says that we do. We've actually cut her transfer back from what it was.
Well, and I've compared transfers that she's used so far this year compared to the last 2 years, and she's used quite a bit less,
right,
and less often,
right,
than she did in the
past 2 years. And if she doesn't use them at the end of the year, say, yeah, we went this much over on the sheriff, but she came in this much under, and in the bottom line of the budget, that's where we're at. Because regardless of the amount of income we have, if we budgeted $16 million, we have to pay out, if they submit $16 million worth of bills, whether the revenue's there or not. In 2009, the sheriff, they didn't pay his bills.
Right, but they actually also tried to cut his expense
But
budget.
when they came in, they said, you owe another $1 million worth of bills. They didn't go through the budget and encumber $1 million in everybody's budget. They went into the reserves and they paid the $1 million because the revenue was that short.
Right, but they also in effect then went over budget on general revenue because they spent money that they didn't even have placed in the budget anymore.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to...
In times of decreasing revenues, when it comes to transfers, going over budget's just going to be a thing. It's going to be a reality.
Well...
Because as revenues fall short of what expenses they were allocated in that initial allocation, we have to cover those.
Right. I mean, what would be best in the first place, though, is to try to anticipate that and at least have those reserves built into the budget for transfers if they're needed instead of going over budget.
In August, that's a very nice sentiment. But to think that we can budget in January and be right on the money in August is pie in the sky, in my opinion.
Well,
and at the end of the year, if we've gone over on that one, honoring our commitments, the law tells us we have to honor our commitments.
Yes, I'm saying you also have to honor your budget and your commitment on the general revenue side as well, though. So if you're going over in one area, you need to come in under somewhere else, and that's.
But I can't take it away from anybody else. I have to hope that if they come in under on their own, but I can't take it away from them. I cannot do it. Because the second we cut 911's budget, we say $61,000 of your budget is no longer yours, that's a lawsuit.
Well, but you didn't understand then what I said in my letter is if we get to that point where she still needs, you know, those transfers, then you're gonna have to then go to emergency fund or then somewhere else within the budget where it's not getting spent or not gonna be needed and pull it off of that.
See, the difference is we cannot squeeze other parts of the budget because the sheriff's revenue's not there. We just can't do it. Cannot be done.
So then you would say we would go to your office if you had 10 and Christie's office had 20 and is that what you're saying, or
I think
Kevin's or anybody
technically
else?
all of that is under the realm of general revenue, and that being the fund where you are not allowed to go over budget, so anything within there is where you have to find it.
And what happens when it's not there? Margie, let's say we encumber all of Margie's to cover what the sheriff needs, and that's a realistic possibility. And then Margie needs $300,000 worth of transfers, let's say. Where are we getting that?
Can't take it from road and bridge, it's special tax.
Right.
Can't.
Well, I
Same way
think
you couldn't take
I
the
think
sheriff's
if you
money
get
and give
to
it to
that
911.
point,
Special tax.
the best thing to do would be to open the budget and pull the reserves in.
That's not additional revenue.
No, but it would be the most transparent way of doing it. Because
See, I want to.
either way, that's what you're doing. You're spending money out of reserves
I
that
would like
weren't
a
in the
nice
budget.
lesson. I would like
So how's
a
it
nice
more
lesson.
transparent
Wait,
and just-
I'd like a nice lesson on transparency. Because I don't, all the transparency I've been hearing is, let's do everything above board, so everybody knows what's going on. Let's don't hide nothing. In this particular case, there is no way that anything is being hidden. When you use the word transparency, that makes it sound like something's been hidden. Something's been hidden. I don't get it. Explain it
Well,
to me. I'll listen.
because when you open your budget, you have to have a public hearing. And so it becomes, you know, countywide public knowledge that we were going over budget because of the transfers. And yes, it has to be paid, and yes, the money has to come from somewhere, and it's coming from reserves.
Okay, so you're
So
saying just for us to have a conversation about it, be in our minutes, that we're taking it out, and we're not hiding anything, it's all in the minutes anybody can read about. You're saying that's not transparent enough? That's a good explanation to me. I always wanted to know. I'm trying to get inside this
I mean,
whole
that
situation. I
way
can't quite get it.
your accounting transactions and everything within your budget, within your books, it's all there on paper. Without doing that,
Without doing what?
it's not, there's
Having a
not
public
a
hearing and all
full,
that? You're saying that's not, there's nothing that's not going to be transparent.
no, I mean, you're gonna have budget documents and everything that show that you had to increase the budget, you had to pull the money in from reserves, what the purpose was of doing that, what the reason behind doing that was. It's all there, documented, you know, without doing that and just going ahead and making the transfers in that one line going over budget. Yeah, it's, you know, it's there in the end, you see that line went over budget, but it doesn't really explain to the public, I don't think, where that money came from, why you went over budget, you know, that's what I'm saying.
It's
There
gonna,
isn't any question where it's coming from, is it? Don't we know
No, I don't know.
From reserves, isn't it?
Yes, but it would be
Okay.
better documented.
It's coming from reserves and we agree on that.
the minutes will reflect
And we're not
that
going to say it's not coming from reserves. I mean, what is it?
money was taken from reserves so the sheriff could make payroll and AP because his revenue is falling short of what it was supposed to be. To me, that's more accurate than saying we took it from the sheriff. The sheriff needed it. We took it from Margie. Margie needed it. We took it from the assessor who needed it. Then we took it from the collector. Then we have 4 transactions to show that the sheriff's revenue fell short. When in actuality, the sheriff's revenue fell short